The fun-loving pitcher who would routinely talk to the baseball was found dead this afternoon, the victim of an apparent accident on his family farm in suburban Boston. Police say Fidrych was found by a family friend underneath a dump truck outside his home at around 2:30 this afternoon. He appeared to have been working on the truck when the accident happened. Back in the summer of '76, the Bird took the baseball world by storm, going 19-9, winning Rookie of the Year honors. During games, he would bend down and groom the mound with his hands, talk to the baseball, give high fives to teammates in the middle of the diamond. He was also featured on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, but knee and shoulder injuries limited him to just 58 total major league games. Mark the Bird Fidrych was just 54 years old. Now, the Bird, not the only baseball icon to pass away today. Since 1971, Harry Kalas has been the voice of the Philadelphia Phillies. Today, that voice was silenced.
Well hit to deep left field. Reynolds back. This ball's out of here. Home run, Michael. Jack Schmidt, and the Phillies have taken a 6-0 lead here in the third inning.
Kalas died where he spent most of his life, in the broadcast booth. He was found passed out in the booth shortly before the Phillies game this afternoon. He was also the voice of NFL Films. Phillies team president simply said, quote, "We lost our voice today." Kalas was 73. And former Arizona State football
76. When he burst on the scene, he talked the baseballs. He was a character. He was so much fun. He was a great pitcher, too. 19-9, the old days of Monday Night Baseball. He was the guy that got the highest ratings in baseball in that 5-year period, and it was a major part of bringing baseball back to the forefront in Detroit. Fun, crazy, and he was great when he was healthy.
There was an innocence to him that everyone appreciated, because this was a young man at that point who came out of nowhere and appreciated the fact that baseball, no matter if you're making so much money, is still supposed to be fun.
He was a wonderful guy with a wonderful smile, a wonderful sense of humor. He had a beautiful family.
When the Tigers would go on the road that year, in particular 1976, but I remember him most from the days that we would go to Boston, and he would come to the broadcast booth, and he would spend innings up there just telling stories and just talking baseball. What a tremendous man he was.
Well, his career obviously was cut a little bit short, but he was an iconic figure here in the Motor City. Mark the Bird Fidrych won 19 games his rookie year in Detroit, and the Bird has passed away at the age of 54. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, we'll relive some of the great memories of Mark the Bird Fidrych and his career, albeit a short one here in Detroit. That's coming up next. The Tigers and White Sox today from Comerica Park. Fidrych passed away yesterday, Rod. Really a sad situation, a sad time here in Detroit. And I know you and I, a couple of years ago, had an opportunity to kind of visit with the Bird. He came on a telecast with us in Boston, and he had just a ton of stories and was just a genuine guy.
You know, I thought he was going to take my job that night we were in Boston, because, I mean, he was analyzing and he was doing some first guessing, some of the things that I like to do, talking about what he would do to opposing hitters, talking about, you know, what pitchers used to do when he pitched opposed to what they're doing now. But just a tremendous man, and he just gave us his time. He looked forward to the times where the Tigers would come to Boston so he could come on the pregame show, spend time with John, and, of course, spend time with us as well.
Well, we do know this, that the great Ernie Harwell, the Hall of Fame voice of the Detroit Tigers, always had some thoughts on Mark Fidrych, or really anybody consulted with the ball club. And, of course, when you talk about Mark the Bird Fidrych, you're talking about a guy that was an iconic figure. And Ernie Harwell, years ago, had these thoughts on the man they called the Bird.
Thank you very much, and hi again, good lookers. Mark Stephen Fidrych had been in the Tiger organization 3 years when spring training rolled around in 1976. He was not even on the Tigers' Major League roster, but he became the sensation of the '76 season. Although he didn't make his first start until May the 15th, Mark went on to win 19 games that season. He was to win only 10 more for the rest of his career. But for that 1 year, he was a national hero, a fresh breeze for the fetid atmosphere of salary battles, court suits, lawyers, agents, and accountants. There are several ways to judge a player, but the best way to assess him is by the reaction of his teammates. With Tiger players, Fidrych was top. They loved him, just as the fans loved him. Mark was flaky. He talked to the ball, jumped in the air, went around the diamond shaking hands with his teammates, but he also produced, and the Tiger players admired him. They quickly accepted him. He gave his teammates credit for his success, and they appreciated his thoughtfulness and his generosity. Players on the opposing teams admired him too. Often when he took a curtain call after a victory, the players on the other team would stay in their dugouts to watch. I think Mark was the first big leaguer to take a curtain call on a regular basis. Whenever he pitched, he drew big crowds. The rival club owners would pray that Fidrych's pitching turn would come during their series with the Tigers. He was extra money in the bank for everybody. He was great because he was natural. Bill Beck told me, if someone had tried to stage Fidrych, it would have fallen flat. It would have been artificial. Ralph Houck was the Detroit manager that year. He handled Fidrych very well. He kept him under wraps for the first 6 weeks of the season. An early disaster might have been the introduction to a different story. Anyway, you can't argue with success. Houck made the right move. The kid had excellent baseball instincts. The first 2 times he handled rundowns, he followed the fundamentals with clinical perfection. Off the field, he was easy and natural with the media and with the fans. He had a delightful way of expressing himself, sprinkling his conversation with one malaprop after another. Early in that first year, Houck had to move the bird to the far end of the dugout to avoid eardrum damage from Mark's constant cheerleading. Once during a rally, Fidrych shouted, "Come on, gang, remember, a hit is as good as a walk." Later, when Mickey Stanley was thrown out attempting to steal third base, Fidrych yelled, "All right, team, let's capitalize on that now." We were in Oakland in September when I saw an item in a syndicated entertainment column that Fidrych would appear in a baseball TV series. I asked him about it. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe my agent will be making a deal. But I'll tell you this, Ernie, no matter what happens, I'll have the last hearsay." Poor Bird. He was a one-year sensation. He hurt his knee in spring training of 1977, then got arm miseries, and never was able to reach those heights again. He tried as much as anybody ever tried. Therapy, operations, rehabilitation, all of it. The Tigers finally gave up on him and released him after the 1981 season. The Red Sox signed him the next February, but he never again recaptured his glory. The greatest quality that Mark Fidrych showed was this: up or down, on top or on the bottom, he was still the same great, enthusiastic kid.
And the words of the great Ernie Harwell, the Hall of Fame broadcaster for the Detroit Tigers, who had the pleasure of calling the games of Mark the Bird Fidrych. And, you know, I was driving to the ballpark this morning, Rod, and I heard Bruce Kim in an interview talk about Mark the Bird Fidrych. Of course, Bruce was the all-time catcher for Fidrych. He caught every time he pitched. And he said, everybody talked about his antics, but this guy was really a good pitcher. And people don't know that he threw 250 innings his rookie year and completed 24 games, really kind of unheard of numbers by today's standards.
You know, and he came out of nowhere. I mean, in that piece right there, Ernie talked about the fact that when he came to spring training that year, he wasn't even on the major league roster. So you're talking about a non-roster invitee to spring training, going on to pitch that many innings. And you know, these days, I mean, we're talking about Porcello, for instance. They're going to limit the amount of innings he throws this year at this level, as do most teams in the major leagues. So he was quite a player, quite a pitcher.
And as he'd like to say, he was just a regular Joe, no pretense about him, just a guy that had a good fastball and a good slider, and he made himself quite a season back in 1976 with 19 victories in his rookie season. Everybody had some thoughts about Mark the Bird Fidrych, and our Shireen Sasky has more on the Bird.
The Bird limped north this season, and now Detroit has a reason to come out and cheer.
The year was 1976. As America celebrated its 200-year history, Detroit celebrated the birth of a phenom. Mark the Bird Fidrych was as quirky as he was talented. The lanky rookie sprinted onto the field, manicured the mound, and of all things, talked to the baseball. He joined the Tigers' starting rotation on May 15th, and less than 2 months later became an all-star.
I was sitting in the dugout, and, you know, all of a sudden, the Tigers, like, basically the game was stopped and said, we have an announcement to make. Mark Fidrych is going to start the All-Star game for the Detroit Tigers. The place went nuts. I went, wow, you know, because I was sitting in my far corner, I'm going, wow, and you know, Mickey comes up, bam, Hiller comes up, boom, you know, and I'm the and they're going, come on, you got to stand up. Batter stepped away from the plate. The game just stopped completely, and it was like, whoa, you know, and then got to call home. Down the dugout, up the runway. Dad, don't worry, you got tickets.
Nearly 64,000 fans flocked to see the Bird pitch, including President Gerald Ford.
And all of a sudden, hey, Mark, you know, President of Michigan, come on out. I said, yes, I know, but we got a game to play. Can't we do this, like, after the game? Because my mind was, like, visually set. We got to beat the National League team. And then I'm going, President of the United States, wow. You know, Mr. Ford, wow. So I stood up, walked over, Mr. Ford, how you doing? I stood on the mound, and I just looked up in Philadelphia, and I went, wow. Did a complete 360. I mean, just looked around, and then all of a sudden, just went, wow, I'm holding the ball, and if I don't throw the ball, they're gonna wait. That's power. The best moment was the first pitch I threw. You know, I mean, I threw it with, I mean, probably the first 4 pitches, I threw everything I had. You know, I mean, it was like, boom. And the worst moment was when they were rejecting it. You know, I'm going, oh, why now? Why this?
The future Rookie of the Year suffered the loss, allowing 2 runs and 4 hits in his 2-inning appearance. Yet he retains fond memories.
It was a beautiful memory. Even though I lost, I had a great career. I call it a career. Some people call it a year. You know? But my career is still going on today. And I thank, and you know why? Because of writers, fans, that's why.
So when you get the call, Bird, keep on talking to the ball.
And the thoughts of Mark the Bird Fidrych, and you could just kind of hear the emotion in his voice, Rod, when he talked about starting the All-Star game in Philadelphia that year. Obviously, it was a great, great thrill for him. He didn't have a great All-Star game. It really didn't matter, though, but you could just hear the emotion in his voice.
And what a tremendous personality. That piece with Shireen Sasky, just talking about calling his dad and getting the news that he was going to pitch in the All-Star game, and the fans just adored him wherever he went, whether it were Tiger Stadium or on the road, and just a tremendous person, and the people here in Detroit absolutely loved him.
Well, another great memory that Mark the Bird Fidrych gave all of us here in Detroit back in September of 1999 was the closing of Tiger Stadium. When we come back, we'll relive those memories. The Bird trotting out in the Tiger Stadium field one last time. Those memories coming up. Rookie season, unbelievable. 19 victories, 24 complete games, 250 innings pitched, and really, Rod, he gave us one of the great memories in Tiger Stadium history. September 27th, 1999, the last game at Tiger Stadium. And Mark the Bird Fidrych obviously was an iconic figure. There were a lot of great stars that played for the Tigers, but it seemed like everybody came out to see him that night.
You know, there are some great players that have put on the Tigers uniform, but I don't know if any drew the kind of attention that he drew to himself. And Jim Price also talked about this, talking to him earlier today. People just absolutely loved to come watch him pitch. They were waiting to watch what he would do next. And, of course, when they introduced him at Tiger Stadium, that last game, the fans just erupted. They absolutely loved him. And he put on one last show here for the fans.
He really did. And, of course, the Bird got his nickname because he resembled Big Bird. And Mark Fidrych doffing the cap. And what he did is he eventually got to the mound, and he took a whole bunch of dirt from the Tiger Stadium mound. Dave Bergman comes over to shake his hand, and just a great, great night here at the ballpark. And, of course, Mark wanted that as a memory of one of the great old ballparks. And Shireen Sasky had a chance afterward to get the thoughts from Mark Fidrych on that night.
The whole activity that went on today, a win today, which makes everything even better. But to just run out there and the people screaming, to me it was like flashbacks, like you've never felt before in a long time. And right now, it's like my feet aren't touching the ground when I'm walking. just to look around. It was like I was playing baseball all over again, but it all has to come to an end now. Now I got to go home. I got my piece of dirt from the mine.
A piece? You got a whole bag full?
Well, I got a bag full. You know why? Because I'm going to make little things up for different people that I know that have been involved with me and stuff, and I'm just going to give it to them.
You know, Mark Fidrych talked about the fact that he took a piece of Tiger Stadium with him. Obviously, he was a big part of Tiger Stadium, but like any other player, the closing of that ballpark, I think, affected a lot of people, and the Bird was no different.
Well, I had a chance to play in that stadium, and it was a special stadium. I've talked about some of the opening days that I've been a part of, and there was none more special than the opening days at Tiger Stadium. And Mark also talked about the way the fans loved him. He also loved the fans as well, because they pretty much made him. Without the fans of Detroit, there really was no Bird.
All right, now the Bird, as we mentioned, played in the All-Star game. His rookie season, not only played in the All-Star game, but started the All-Star game. And while things didn't go all that well for him that day, can you imagine, Rod, what was going through his mind when he took the mound at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, making that first All-Star start? It had to be an unbelievable feeling for him.
Well, you know, he was awfully nervous going up against that National League club, because you had some tremendous players back in those days that were playing for the National League. You had guys like Foster, and you had guys like Bench, and you had Morgan. Those guys were all the Cincinnati Reds. But just a tremendous honor, though, to go from a guy that was a non-roster invitee to spring training to a guy that makes the club, to pitches that many innings, that many complete games, wins that many games, and on top of that, he starts the All-Star game.
Yeah, he starts the All-Star game, and he was bouncing off the field, and there were many, many more memories of Mark the Bird Fidrych. And, you know, some of the things we look back on concerning the Bird are really, really special. And this guy, I think, was special to the city of Detroit in so many ways. But, you know, there have been a lot of great players that have played here, but maybe not that have captured the memories that the Bird did.
You know, and also as a former player, when you have a guy that gets that much attention, I mean, there's usually some jealousy on the part of the other players on the team and also the opposing team. But opposing teams will come out to watch this guy. They were on the top step watching every pitch. They were waiting to see what he would do next. And his teammates absolutely loved him. There was no jealousy whatsoever as far as all the attention he was getting.
So Mark the Bird Fidrych passes away at the age of 54, and obviously meant a lot to this city here in Detroit. It meant a lot to baseball. And one of the things that we've noticed, Rod, is that everybody in baseball misses this guy. It's not just here in the city of Detroit. This guy had a large impact on the game as a whole, and really, from one guy that played 1 year in the big leagues, that really transcends the game quite a bit. That's impressive.
Well, in 1976, I was just a junior in high school in Santa Monica, California, and really, at that point in time, didn't pay a whole lot of attention to what was going on in Major League Baseball, even though that was a dream of mine to play in the big leagues. But you surely knew about the Bird in Detroit because that's what a lot of people were talking about across the country.
You know, when he was in his rookie season, I think I was 13 years old. I'm dating myself, but that's the way it goes. And one of the things I remember is watching the Bird pitch here. And, you know, he pitched that big Monday night game against the New York Yankees, and that was impressive because he beat the New York Yankees on Monday Night Baseball, which was like Monday Night Football back then. But that was my great memory of him just kind of carrying this town. And no matter what TV, they would crawl the score of that game and what the Bird...
The world came to learn what Detroit already knew. In the summer of 1976, the Bird was the word.
He is some kind of unbelievable. This kid is terrific.
Oh, well, everybody's heard about the Bird. The Bird's the winner.
He came from nowhere and was suddenly everywhere. The gangly 21-year-old with curly locks and oddball antics that would have been corny if they weren't so uniquely him.
No one ever pitched games like he did. No one had the fan following that he did. And so I'm trying to visualize sometimes when he's in the game and you have 50,000 people saying your name from first inning to the last inning, you can't comprehend that.
That 1 year, oh man, I mean, he had 24 complete games, 11 shutouts. 2 or 3 games, he pitched 10, 11 innings. I mean, the innings he pitched, I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't think that ever will be done again.
And everybody had to have a piece of him. From the biggest of birds to the chairman of the board, Fidrych was the first athlete to appear on the cover of Rolling Stone. He was a rock star, performing sold-out shows wherever he went.
It was so loud, you're thinking, when the fans going to quit? They never quit. I know even when we hit, it was the same volume of people yelling.
You know, people just start coming out the dugout and they think it's a Bird, the park go crazy. And what made it so beautiful about that, he would go and sit on top of the dugout with him. I mean, that's the type of guy he was.
By definition, a phenom is a remarkable or outstanding person. On a mediocre 74-87 team, whenever Fidrych pitched, the Tigers believed they were phenomenal.
I hurt my ankle. Been in ice all the game, and he hooked up with Gaylord Perry. And fifth inning, come in the training room, he said, "You got to get ready." I said, "What you mean get ready?" He said, "I ain't getting up no more runs." And Gaylord is throwing good today, and we're going to go right down to the end with that. So I didn't pay no attention. I said, "Mark, I can't play. I can't hit." He said, "Just get ready." So he come back in the seventh inning. He said, "You getting ready?" Start getting up. So I started getting my frame of mind. I said, "Oh, man." He made me believe something that I didn't think I could do it. And I finally got up. He came back in the ninth. He went out there, and I hit a walk-off home run to win the game for him. I mean, that's the type of inner strength he gives me as a ball player.
He did and accomplished more in 1 year than most players do in a career. But as quickly as it came, it went. Too fast, too soon.
He did a lot.
He's a good man. He really was. He was honest, true-hearted, very good people.
Because of him, that summer of '76 endures, even if its bird is now gone, too fast, too soon. Fidrych's impact at Tiger Stadium was undeniable. The average attendance in the 18 games that the Bird started was well over 33,000. On nights when the Bird was cooped up, the average attendance was less than 16,000. The Fidrych factor helped the Tigers increase their season-long average attendance by more than 4,000 people.
Coming up next, when Tigers Weekly Remembering the Bird continues, one member of this year's Tigers coaching staff tells us what it was like growing up in Detroit during the craze of the Bird. As quickly as the Bird's career took off, injuries brought it to a close. But Mark's attitude never changed. He'll tell you why next. And later, we relive the Bird's last flight at Tiger Stadium. Tigers Weekly, Remembering the Bird, is brought to you by your local Chrysler, Jeep, and Dodge dealers. Remembering the Bird is brought to you by Honda Bloomfield, your home team Honda.
The Bird limped north this season, and now Detroit has a reason to come out and cheer. Come and cheer, come and cheer. Bird, it's great to have you here. So when you get the call, Bird, keep on talking to the ball.
He stayed in an apartment about probably 3 blocks from where I lived, and every night that he pitched, there would be 200-300 people waiting for him to get home, and it was incredible what he created here in Detroit.
In 1976, the Tigers were coming off consecutive last-place finishes, which included a 102-loss season in 1975. It was a team in desperate need of a spark. That it would come from an unassuming kid from Massachusetts released an unbridled enthusiasm that can still be felt at this famous corner. Fidrych recounted his colorful career in an interview conducted back in 2001.
Mark Fidrych's Major League Baseball career may have been cut short, but he made the most of every pitch.
I had a great career. You're right. I call it a career. Some people call it a year. You know? But my career is still going on today. Why? Because of writers, fans. That's why. People say, what's it like standing on the mound with 40,000 people? What's it like? There's no word in the English language that could describe it. You'd have to be out there yourself just to stand there and hear the roar.
The roar was so deafening that even 25 years after his rookie season, Fidrych could still hear the support and relive the emotion associated with it. As word of the Bird spread throughout baseball, capacity crowds flocked to ballparks to see him pitch. Once, the start of a road game was delayed so fans stuck in traffic wouldn't miss his start. The humble rookie embraced every moment of the hysteria.
I was aware of it like you read about, because Tommy Verizon and Vern Rule would make me aware of it. You know, Tommy would go, boy, it's unbelievable. They came all to see you. I said, no, they came to see us play. Now be quiet.
Fans were drawn to Fidrych's presence on the mound, from his domination of opposing batters to his quirky antics between pitches. Yet all along, the kid out of Boston was just being himself.
A lot of people ask about the antics. It was like, did you just start that? No, I did that in Little League. My father taught me to fill a hole up in front of the rubber, because he did concrete work and all. He says, make your own hole, that way your own thing is going. I always talk to myself, I never thought anything of it until the writers started writing about it, and then it became a big thing, a real big thing.
Then, almost as quickly as Fidrych burst upon the scene, he encountered a series of bad breaks. During spring training in 1977, the All-Star suffered a knee injury. 6 weeks after his return, he felt his arm go dead during a game against the Orioles. 8 years later, Fidrych would learn he had actually torn his rotator cuff.
When you got to throw in pain, it's tough. It'll come around, don't worry.
The buzz about the Birds' numerous comeback attempts permeated throughout baseball.
Nice to meet you. My pleasure. Nice to meet you.
My father talks about you all the time.
There you go, yeah.
You're really coming back?
Well, I'm going to try.
Despite his exhaustive efforts, Mark the Bird Fidrych was forced to call it quits at age 29. Yet when reflecting upon his short baseball career, Fidrych wasn't bitter. Instead, he chose to relish the impact he had on the game he loved and the connection he made with its fans.
I'll never stop following the game. The game will always be in me for the rest of my life, for the rest of my daughter's life, and my wife's life, because, I mean, it was an error in my thing that I'm still lucky that people want to know what Mark Fidrych is doing. I tell you, I always cherish the fans, because the fan, without the fan, you don't have a baseball game.
Mark Fidrych made the place absolutely packed every single game, and that's the definition of a superstar.
Coming up next, he may have been the biggest media sensation baseball has ever seen. We'll hear from the people who got to watch the Bird on a full-time basis. You won't want to miss the stories they have from on and off the field. Had he seen more Tigers than probably anyone in team history? Ernie Harwell shares his thoughts on what made Mark Fidrych like no other.
25.
Remembering the Bird is brought to you by your local Chrysler, Jeep, and Dodge dealers.
This is neat. I remember watching Big Bird with my little sister. You know, this is awesome. To me, meeting that guy, seeing him, it was awesome to say, you know, I have actually met the original Big Bird. And I had a blast in the field with him.
And here is that infamous Sports Illustrated with Big Bird. You know, part of what endeared us to Fidrych was his colorful personality. And yes, he did some weird things on the mound and was uniquely accessible to fans and media alike. But none of that would have mattered much if he also wasn't a heck of a pitcher. Matt Shepard reminds us of just how good he was from those that saw him most.
On the mound is this young man by the name of Mark Fidrych.
His impact was immense, even though his stay was short.
Pictures can tell most everything about Euchre, but there's a lot about him that we maybe don't understand.
And his personality was contagious, though misunderstood.
One of the funniest guys I've seen come along in baseball in a long time.
When an unexpected Mark Fidrych burst onto the baseball scene in 1976, he took Detroit and the major leagues by storm.
It truly was a happening. I mean, it was so spontaneous. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't planned. He wasn't even on the roster in spring training. And he went from being a nobody that nobody had ever heard of, nobody cared about, to suddenly he was the toast and the talk of the town, and he was, you know, the most popular sports celebrity that summer in America.
He reached out to everybody, and everybody reached back. Mark Fidrych made the place absolutely packed every single game, and that's the definition of a superstar. And Detroit and Tiger Stadium was a fun place to be.
After '68,
71, okay, but there were some lean years, and they needed a Mark Fidrych. I don't think anybody ever did what he did, and nobody captured a town like him.
For a time, during that 76 season, Fidrych was the Detroit Tigers. Like Ty Cobb in the early 1900s and Al Kaline in the 60s and 70s, not of Hall of Fame play, but in popularity.
I don't think there's ever been another player, not only on the Tiger organization, but in all of baseball, who's had the impact for 1 year that Mark Fidrych had in 1976.
He was one of the most charismatic youngsters to ever come into this game. He was unique, he was special, he loved life, he lived it well as far as he pleased people, and he pleased the opposition.
That may have been, but the opposition knew that despite Fidrych's less than conventional antics on the mound, he was a pitcher and a fierce competitor.
In July that year, the Oakland A's were in town, and it was a game in which he pitched an 11-inning shutout and won the game 1-0. But during that game, Claudell Washington, who was a good hitter in his day, got into the box and then stepped out and tried to slow the Bird down. And he finally stepped back in, and the next pitch was right at his knees.
He pitched one of the greatest games I've ever seen pitched. It was against the Yankees. And it was a nationally televised game, and he absolutely, the Yankees had zero chance.
Fidrych feels his position well and throws out Randolph by 45 feet.
So besides being the personality that he was also very good out on that bump.
He'd be out there pitching a 9-inning game, and he'd pitch it in an hour 53 or 2 hours and 4 minutes. I mean, everything he threw was over the plate, and it was at the hitter's knees.
An all-star who led the majors in complete games that summer and led the American League in ERA, but saw himself as no different as the people who packed stadiums to watch him play.
People just wanted to be around him, to see him pitch and see the things he did, and see the reaction from fans of all ages. I think that's the other thing about Mark. The fans of all ages loved him.
He uttered the famous quote, "I'm just a human being that my mom and dad made." And you know, you think it's simple, but that was him.
Mark Fidrych started 56 games in his major league career. One man was in the press box for all of them, Ernie Harwell. The Tigers Hall of Fame broadcaster will always remember the influence Fidrych had on his teammates.
With Tiger players, Fidrych was top. They loved him, just as the fans loved him. Mark was flaky. He talked to the ball, jumped in the air, went around the diamond shaking hands with his teammates, but he also produced, and the Tiger players admired him. They quickly accepted him. He gave his teammates credit for his success, and they appreciated his thoughtfulness and his generosity. He was a one-year sensation. He hurt his knee in spring training of 1977, then got arm miseries, and never was able to reach those heights again. He tried as much as anybody ever tried. Therapy, operations, rehabilitation, all of it. The Tigers finally gave up on him and released him after the 1981 season. The Red Sox signed him the next February, but he never again recaptured his glory. The greatest quality that Mark Fidrych showed was this: up or down, on top or on the bottom, he was still the same great, enthusiastic kid.
The final game at Tiger Stadium is an event that no Tiger fan will ever forget. One special moment was the return to Michigan and Trumbull for the 1976 Rookie of the Year. And we hear from the fans, who just as much as the Bird made that magical year special. And we have one final tribute to the man that will never be forgotten when Tigers Weekly, Remembering the Bird, continues.
The 2-2, yeah, got him, ball game!
Thank you, old friend. Nobody will forget when Todd Jones threw the final pitch at Tiger Stadium, a performance that helped the Tigers leave Michigan and Trumbull with an 8-2 win over Kansas City. But a special appearance by the Bird capped off a memorable ceremony and helped earn this week's Toyota of Waterford Play of the Week.
The whole activity that went on today, a win today, which makes everything even better. But to just run out there and the people were screaming, to me it was like flashbacks like you've never felt before in a long time. And right now it's like my feet aren't touching the ground when I'm walking. Just to look around, it was like I was playing baseball all over again. But it all has to come to an end now. Now I got to go home. I got my piece of dirt from the
A piece? You got a whole bag?
Well, I got a bag full. You know why? Because I'm going to make little things up for different people that I know that have been involved with me and stuff, and I'm just going to give it to them.
In 1976, this place was packed every time Fidrych took the mound. These were literally the hottest seats in town. Fidrych had a connection with fans that might never be duplicated. Justin White has more on a unique and intimate relationship.
In the summer of 1976, Mark Fidrych was almost as popular as disco and bell-bottoms. Fans flocked to see the bird spread his wings.
When the bird was going to pitch, you were either at the game or in front of a television set, and it just inspired everybody.
And not only fans in the Motor City. Bird watching became appointment viewing. Opposing teams asked the Tigers to change their rotation so Fidrych could pitch in their ballparks. That season, the Tigers averaged 18,000 more fans for his starts.
The crowd just on their feet, screaming for, go Mark, go. And, when he wasn't on the field, they constantly cheered to bring him out of the dugout until he came out and waved his hat at the crowd.
Everybody went nuts. We all went nuts at home too. He was great. He was a legend.
Fun was the word when the bird was on the mound. Even if the Tigers weren't winning, and chances are they were if he was pitching, fans couldn't get enough of Fidrych's wacky ways.
He brought a lot of enthusiasm to the game. Talking to the ball.
Patting the mound.
It was hilarious.
But Fidrych's dominance on the mound was no laughing matter for opposing hitters. His first major league start was a complete game 2-hitter against the Indians. From there, the bird took flight, winning Rookie of the Year honors and finishing second in Cy Young voting.
He really fooled all the batters, and of course he was in the All-Star game. His career was much too short.
He was a great pitcher and a great ball player.
His antics and his awesome pitching turned Fidrych into a rock star, but he never forgot where he came from, and those who met the bird embraced him for his character as much as they did for the kind of character he was.
I went to Tiger Fantasy Camp in Lakeland, and he was my coach for a week. And we went out to dinner and had a few drinks together, and he told me his whole life story. He was one of the nicest people I ever met.
He was an average guy that enjoyed the game of baseball. He was genuine, sincere, and there isn't anything like him today.
And with that, we're just about out of time. Thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of Tigers Weekly, Remembering the Bird. Before we go, we'd like to leave you with one more tribute to the man that we will know and love forever, Mark the Bird Fidrych.
Well, here's your pitch. Ground ball should be the ball game. It's over.
My career is still going on today. And then you know why? Because of writers, fans. That's why.